So yeah, I'm going to call this new video Squid, all capitals because I find that preferable. Squid _3. It's the same, we're using the same process. We're going at 19, 20, 10, 80, 24 frames per second. And I'm going to create my scene.
Do you think mirroring is best again?
I think it is, yeah. Just it's a little bit of a friendlier way to navigate the more complex parts of the interface. I'm also just going to restore my default workspace if that's not already been done. I just want to take it back to its base functions, like remove some of the extra things that I had in place. So we're going to do some design work, but I don't want to go into too much detail on that. So I'm going to lead you into it and then just kind of ask you to get it done. So what we're going to create first off is we're going to draw another squid, but this time, just like the second time round actually, we're going to separate each element into its own layer, so its own drawing layer. But when we're drawing, we're going to make sure that obviously we're in camera view, when we're creating line art, we're going to set it to automatically become color art. So we're going to create a workflow whereby, just in drawing the lines, we create the shapes we need to quickly color stuff in. So the process that we're going to go through, let's start by taking a minute to go and set up one new drawing layer, which we'll call body. Then we'll do one that's called eye and one that's called pupil. So I'm going to walk through this as well. So these are all, we're going to keep this vector-based as well for now. I think staying with vector-based is probably the best way forward when we look at the more complex behaviours that Harmony is capable of. Bear with me, I've got an extremely long mouse cable that I'm trying to work with over here. So yeah, I'm going for a new drawing. This one's called body. And then instead of the add and close function that you have up here, instead of going add and close, I'm just going to hit add. And then I can just put the next one in. So I add pupil, add. Then I'll do L. So I'll do LT _1. That's long tentacle 1. LT _2 is long tentacle 2. Then I'm going to do ST, so short tentacle 2, and short tentacle 1, and then I'm going to hit add and close. And if I bring up my timeline, I can remove that first drawing layer, so I can get rid of that one. I don't need that anymore. But now I've got all of the vector-based layers that I need to go in and start putting those elements together. So just kind of bang, 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 make it all really quickly. And then I'm just going to go over to my drawing tools and just make sure that I've got the right tools set. I'm not going to draw anything, I'm just going to look at the settings of drawing tools. So I think for clarity, what I would like to do, let's make colour a little bit more visible just there. I'm going to do a couple of things. First off, I know that I'm going to draw, in terms of my outlines, I'm going to use the pencil tool for that, because that gives me quick way to change the contours like we looked at last time, do quick contour editing. So I'm going to use the pencil tool, and then in the pencil tool settings, just down here we go, there's a couple of things I want to make sure are active. So I don't want draw behind active, I don't want autofill active, I don't want to automatically trim things, but what I do want to do is automatically create color art. So I'm going to select that one. What I don't want to do, morning, I'm not going to auto flatten my lines, because if I'm drawing my tentacles, for example, and one part I'm really happy with, but another line I'm not, I don't want them to squash down into the same thing. I want to be able to select lines maybe individually and move them around whilst I'm designing the character. I'm going to leave the auto connect thing, so the close gap, sorry, I'm going to leave that active because that's just going to help me out. So if at any point my lines are quite close together but not quite touching, do you remember we looked at the stroke lines last week? It's going to put stroke lines in for me and just close the gap. So even though it doesn't look like it's connected, it kind of is connected. So that's the plan for the moment. Now what I'm going to do, now I'm happy with the way that tool's set to behave, and we're just in drawing at the moment, we're not in colour. Then I'm going to go down to my color palette, and I'm going to start setting up lines. So my vectorized line, I'm going to set it to HSV sliders because I find them always easier to navigate. And then I'm going to find kind of the color I want. I think I'm going to stick with those kind of strange pinky colors that I was using last time because they're quite nice. So I'm changing my vectorized line to kind of this pinky salmon-ish sort of color. That's all fine. So I'm keeping that called vectorized line. I'm going to copy the color ID. I'm going to go to my blue. Sorry. I'm going to copy. And then I'm going to paste as new colors. So what I'm doing here is I've basically duplicated that vectorized line, and then I'm going to rename it as body and then underscore local. We talked about this a little bit last year actually, the idea of local colors. So it's when light is not affecting an object, what is the actual true localized color on the surface of the object? What is it? So I made a very clear decision there. I chose my line art to be the same color as the local color of my body. So when I actually color in, I'm going to get a seamless shape. Yeah, I'm not going to get an outline and then some color on the inside. So I'm making very clear decisions quite early on before I've even drawn anything of how I want that to work. What I'll then do again is if I just right click again and go paste as new colors, it's created another one of these. And then what I'm going to do with this one, I'll do it with the top one just here. I'm going to double click it. So I'm going into the HSV. So you don't want to be RGB, that's a nightmare. Go into HSV, so hue, saturation, value, which is by clicking any one of these. So start with the hue. And I'm just going to take that hue marker, I'm just going to bring it down ever so slightly. So what I'm doing there is I'm not changing the color, I'm just bringing the value of that color down. Yeah, I'm reducing the light that's touching it. I might do it a little bit more dramatically actually. I might bring it right down. And then this one I'm calling body underscore LV. So body low value. All right, low light levels, that's what it looks like. And then I'll close that one. And then I'll do one more, I think. I might not even use the next one I'm going to do, so I'm going to go paste as new color again. And then I'll change this one. Let's go to the actual color itself. And then lift it. Not even sure if I'm going to use this, if I'm honest, but we'll see. I'm going to lift it, and then I'm just going to desaturate slightly. Not a lot, just a tiny little bit. And then this one is body underscore HV. So body high value. So anywhere that maybe light is making more direct contact. It's quite difficult to see the difference between the two, but they are different. And then I think just for my own sanity, I'm just going to move these up to the top. So I just shift clicked all of them, move them up the top. One of the things you can do, and this is a little bit of a cheat, you know, if you find yourself doing a lot of character design in Harmony or character rigging, you'll start finding shortcuts, you know, ways to just make the workflow a little bit simpler. So, you know, I picked that vectorized line, and it's the same as my body local. What I have done in the past is actually change the vector. Once I know what my local color is and that my line and my local are going to be the same, is I'll actually take my vectorized line and change it back to black. So that when I'm drawing my outlines, I don't have to look at a weird color. You know, I can get like really concrete, like this is what my shape looks like. So I can temporarily change it one way, knowing that because of the way Harmony works with colors in vector mode, that when I change it back, it will just automatically do it for me anywhere I've used the vectorized line. So it depends. I mean, some people might not have any problem. If I go to my pencil tool, let's go to, because we're going to start with the body, obviously. So we go to that body layer, yeah, we're on frame number 1. Let's, whoops, keep that zoomed in, zoom that out. yeah, you know, if you're kind of happy drawing with that pink, then fine, not a problem. But you might find it's just easier to draw with black and then change it to pink later on. So what I'm going to do now, I've got all my tools set. So I've got, I know exactly how my pencil's going to behave, that it's going to turn line art directly into color art, so it will translate the strokes down. It's not going to auto flatten, but it is going to try and auto connect. I've got all of my palettes ready, because obviously my black and white, because I'm keeping it cartoony here. You know, I'm going for, that's the eye and the pupil. Yeah, not going to get too complex with it or too stylized. I've got all my layers in place, and I'm kind of ready to go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow just on that first frame, and I'm not worried about layers order just yet. It's just the objects. On this, I'm now going to draw just the outline of my body on the body layer, the long tentacles on the long tentacle layer, the short tentacles on the short tentacles layer, and I might even start to go into a little bit more detail than maybe we've done in the past. So because I've got the tools all set, I don't have to rush this. I can take my time, and I'm actually going to go in and draw these with a little bit more control than I've done in our previous classes anyway. So I'm going to try and get them relatively neat, and there's a reason for that. Because of the style of animation that we're doing, we need clean characters. Yeah, when it's hand-drawn, it's all scratchy. That's kind of cool. That's its own aesthetic. This is something very different. So we've got to go for relatively clean drawing. So that's the plan. I'm going to take about, I'm going to give you a good 20 minutes, I think, at least, and then I'll plow into this for 20 minutes. I'm going to cheat as well, like copying and pasting the drawings, like for the shorts and the longs. No point in drawing them twice if you don't have to. What I would say, though, is because we're going for something that is rigged, I am, to the best of my ability, going to draw my tentacles straight. So I'm not going to draw them stylized. I'm not drawing, you know, animation just yet. I'm creating a character. So I'm going to draw my tentacle relatively straight. I'm going to draw my eye wide open. Okay? All right, so 20 minutes. Let's just kind of see how you get on with it. You'll be pleased to know my computer has not yet exploded, which is great. Okay, let's get straight into this, shall we? So I'm just going to do a couple of things. Just going to make my pencil a bit fatter. I'm also maybe going to increase the smoothing slightly. I want a relatively consistent shape. So. So you can see as well, I'm not thinking about anything beyond just those kind of base shapes for the moment. So I am pretty happy with that, if I'm honest. You know, the settings work the way I wanted them to. I'm automatically creating that color art, so I don't need to really think about like kind of base color or anything too much at this point in time. What I'm also going to do whilst I'm doing this is just make sure I'm thinking about the fact that I'm looking at a camera screen as well. So I know scale's not super important at this stage, and we've looked at that last week about scaling objects and kind of getting them working for you, you know, getting them in the right position. But I still want to give some consideration to it. You might also find that you need to scale down just so you can get the right shape for your object. And
Are we filling them or just the line up?
not yet. Well, we'll just do line. I mean, you can just do line up for the moment, but as you get them done, you know, move on to the next stage. If you want to, you can fill them. Ultimately, you need a complete object anyway. I mean, if it makes you all feel better, I'll go to my body local and make sure I'm obviously in my color layer.
When you're working with the colour layer,
Yeah.
can you just hide that?
Oops.
So you can, if you've filled in all your colour and you just want to just go back and look at the line art, how can you...
Sorry, if what? So if you fill in the
So
color.
if you're doing your line art and then you do the colour on the colour layer, and then you actually like...
Oh, you just want to go back and look
And
at
then
the line.
you just want to look at the line.
Yes.
You're doing the onion skin. It's like it's not filled in with colour, and it just becomes a...
It does, yeah. It's actually this view here. So it's the C line art as the current layer, C color art as the current layer is where it will pull it through. And then you should be able to turn that off. And when you turn it off, it will push one into the background, especially if you've got the light box active. It's kind of hard to see because I haven't drawn anything yet. But it should dull one out. So at least the whatever you're looking at, the line or the color, is the forward one. There is a way in the
go entirely, but...
No, there is a way in the settings to completely remove it under the view preferences. Yeah. So where am I at the moment? I need to... Okay, so this was the other thing that you might come up against. So your line art and your color art can sometimes separate from one another. So this is what I've got here, and this is because I automatically set it to create color art. So if I go back to my pencil, because I automatically set it to create color art, when I drew the line, it turned it into the color art. The line art, I then went back and went, oh, I'm not happy about that, and I started changing it and moving it around, as you can see here. But it already made it and printed it down to the line art. So the way around this, and to stop this, because I know someone did this last week actually, they separated the two and they weren't moving together. The way to get around it is to actually stall the process. So what I mean by that is if we go back, so I'll go back to before I've drawn my, so I've gone back to before I've drawn anything. Let's move those back to where they were. Make sure I'm still in my body, absolutely. Is with my pencil tool, is turn that mode off. So we turn off this automatic. Let's reset my view so it looks a bit sensible. So I've turned off the automatically create color art. And then what I'll do, make sure I'm in my vectorized line, is create the shape that I want. So say that's my shape. It's not, but let's just say for argument's sake that it is. Or actually, let's just draw it a little bit better. So it's something kind of like that. That doesn't exist as color art at the moment because I haven't set it to automatic. So I'll do what I want to do. I'll adjust it how I want to adjust it. So I want to perhaps, like at the very least, I need to connect these two up. Probably need to bring this line up a little bit and this one in a bit. Maybe remove that pinch slightly. Actually, I might just thin the whole thing down. It's just a little bit too fat. Okay, so let's say I'm kind of happy with the way that looks at the moment. That's all fine. Once I'm happy with it, I transform with the pencil tool. I hit this little button up here, which is, it creates color art from the line art. And now what's happened, it will bring it in after I've made the changes, as opposed to as soon as I draw the line. So I can kind of have a little bit more control. You can configure that as well. This is really clever. So you can actually decide, there's two other art layers, which we're not going to get into yet, because they can make things, if you know how to use them, they're fantastic. If you use them wrong, they wreck everything. But you can actually change the destinations as well. So you can say, look, when I click that button, you can take your color art and line art and turn it to your color art. But you could also take your underlay, which is a really good one for pencil testing and roughs, and turn that into your color art. Or the other one I like to do, take your underlay, which is your rough pencil test, and turn it into your final line art. Yes, you can actually turn stuff into line art from underlay, but we're not going to get into that, mainly because I haven't actually showed you how to add underlay and overlay into this art layers menu yet. We will get to it though. So yeah, you can shift click to do it. So that's kind of my final shape, and then yeah, I'm just going to shut up actually and let you all get on with this for a little bit. So I'm going to scale this down and just start drawing in the next component.
Do you know when you're using the contour editor, you could add like pivot points?
Yes.
I thought it was a P. You click on P to do that.
That's a peg. Is it not? Oh no, actually, yeah. If you hover, is it not? If you hover and click P with the contour editor, or you can just command click, I do believe. Yeah, command click.
Cool. Thank you.
So yeah, I need to get into this now and actually get it done, because otherwise you're all going to be really far ahead of me. Let me get rid of that keyframe and all. Go to. Might be helpful as well at this stage to just turn animate mode off, because you don't want to start accidentally doing what I'm doing down here, which is accidentally adding keyframes. Go, and then so I'm kind of happy with that. I'll dump that down into the color art layer by clicking the button up here, and you can see it's brought the stroke down for me. So when I go to color art, I can see the stroke really clearly. And then body local, bang, straight in. Right, next one. Let's go for the eye. Remember when you draw on your next object, so I'm like, oh, now I'm going to do the eye. When you do that, just make sure you jump back up to your line layer. Yeah, you don't accidentally go somewhere else that's maybe not appropriate.
Dan?
Yes.
When I'm trying to move my tentacle, it's moving the line art separate from moving the art. How do I move both at the same time?
What do you mean move? Define move.
Like, squid on your tentacle here. Stick them on your or do I just need to go straight off this way?
What mode do you? Alright, so you've selected them all. Go to your transform mode here. Right now. Oh, yeah, because that's so that transform mode kind of sits outside of any animating. Yeah, and it just takes the whole object and puts it where you want it.
Why can't you just paint like it for some reason?
Because your strokes probably aren't closed. You haven't closed the line. It won't paint in if the line is open. Remember, we haven't put pegs on anything at the moment either, and it's the pegs that really enable us to move whole objects and control them. So don't get too caught up with some of the details of it all. Right, so put that in there. Pupil. I'm like racing because I don't want any of you to sort of beat me. I need to do it first. Black.
Can you just go through with me what the end goal is? Because I think I missed it.
Working on, sorry?
What the end goal is.
We're going to do a deformation rig. So we're going to do a full kind of cut-out rig design, effectively, is the plan. But what I want to do first is get you a built rig. So we get a base rig built, and then we start to modify and augment it with alternate versions of certain objects, replacement tentacles, replacement eye shapes. I'll show you how to map it out in node view, and then we can look at actually adding deformation rigs, like actual bones, into the cutout. It's a very, very different mode of animation that we've done in the past. It's moving up, it's like the opposite end of the scale almost to the drawn animation.
Yeah, so it's like puppetry.
Yeah, it is a puppet
Puppet
rig, but it's
skeleton.
far more comprehensive than that. Closer to a Maya rig.
Yeah.
How do you combine pivot points?
How do you combine them? What do you mean combine
As in
them?
like, 'cause like here I have quite a few next to each other, but because they're not actually linked, I can't paint inside of them. They've got a few, like 5 there.
The best thing to do is give them all a little bit of space. What it does do as well, when you shift the whole thing, it will simplify the line. So this is one way to remove some of those shapes and just pull that out. What is this? You've got some really kind of complex shapes.
I don't know how that happened.
Is it just that you're trying to connect the two
Yeah.
together? How do we know what the line looks like? That's the other thing that kind of concerns me at the moment. Wow, okay. We could probably try and cut some of them out, but to be honest, it's not going to affect the overall shape. What's going to affect it more is the way it arcs.
And it's just because it won't fit, like, when I try to use the paint bucket, it just won't work.
But it will work. It's possibly not the issue. Have you transferred it down to the colour art?
Yeah.
No, you haven't.
Oh.
You need to hit after you've drawn it. That. There you go. And now that's a closed shape.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. So let's really kind of plough ahead with this. Sorry, I'm definitely probably behind everybody now. Start looking at how we do it. Okay. Right. Where am I? So long tentacle 1. Okay. Yes.
I'm trying to colour over the main colour.
Trying to colour over.
Yeah.
Have you set it as paint behind? And are you on the? So you first off, you're on the. Pause for a second. Right. Where are we? You're on the body layer, and you're trying to colour. So first off, you need to be on your colour art layer up here. Because you're in colour art. Define, repaint. Have you selected your body layer value? Yeah, now it's adding. It's just you need to make sure you're on that lower layer. Okay. And that's all right. Oh, you're all so far ahead of me. I will catch up. It kills me. Okay. Right.
with the long.
One's being very sensitive, which is a unique challenge, to say the very least. Where am I? Short tentacle 2. 9 pencil.
Wow.
I'm only joking.
Right, this one into place.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to quickly delete my legs.
Okay.
What's like?
What? And I mean, you mean completely delete them?
Yeah, because I need to make mine straight. I didn't realize that it was straight.
Then I would recommend you just kind of grab them, grab the layer, just delete the layer if you're completely unhappy with it.
But like right click and delete because it doesn't do it.
What do you mean? But if you select the layer in the timeline,
Oh, the whole layer.
yeah, or not the layer, but like that frame, because you're only in one frame, aren't you? Just select the frame in that layer. Have you tried hitting delete?
Oh, there.
Yeah.
I was right clicking and pressing delete keyframe.
No, because you hadn't. It wasn't. It's not a keyframe that you've got. It's a drawing.
I see.
Okay. Right. Are we nearly there? I feel like I'm nearly there. Okay, so I have got a simplified version. Now I expect you all to go into far more detail than I have with like the local value, the high value, the low value, and we will do that. I'm going to give you just another 5 minutes or so, and then we're going to look at just going back through the rigging process that we looked at last week and just look, getting pegs in order, going to the node view, setting up that structure, and then we'll start looking at the slightly more complex elements. One thing I would do as well, if you've got a bit of time, if you feel like, oh, I've done all the drawing and it looks all right, go back through each drawing and just make sure that you've got animate mode off. So this is animate mode over here. You want that off. You don't want it selected. And go through each component and just make sure that in your advanced animation tools, remember these ones, that the transforms from the right place. The rotate is rotated from the right place, that it is the scale you want it to be. And you need to check that for all of those layers because not all of them are going to be correct. So for example, like straight away, my eye is in the wrong place. It should be there. My pupil is in the wrong place. It needs to be moved down. This tentacle needs to sit there. So I'm just going back and actually making sure that wherever my objects are rotating from, that's the correct place for them to rotate. So that's not quite right. That needs to move up a little bit. Oh, and that thing where you save your work, do that as well. That's really, really good practice to get into.
this and nothing. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, can you give you a couple more minutes? And while you're doing that, I'm just going to have a little play around. Just here. Right, just one more moment and then we need to move on. Okay, everyone save your work, stop what you're doing, whatever state it's in. You have got time, remember these are just the drawings. We can go back to them, we can add the low value, you know, we can add detail, we can do all sorts of lovely, wonderful, crazy things if we want to. So don't feel like you can't go back and work on it. So now what we're going to do is we just want to start thinking about the actual process of rigging, because these are all just separate drawings, as some of you have already come up against. If you start moving the line art, not the colour art, they all start pulling apart and it all goes a little bit strange. And what we need to now do is start to solidify them all, just like we did last week. So first thing we're going to do is shift select all of the layers of what we've drawn. So there's mine. I haven't gone into my colours. I will do, but not yet. So shift select them all, and then hit the add peg button, and that will add a peg individually to every single drawing. Then what we're going to do once we've added a peg, and you should have no keyframes here either. Make sure if you've got keyframes, just right click and select delete the keyframe. You shouldn't have keyframes. If you have, it means you've been moving stuff with animate mode on, or you've been using the weird transform tool when you should have been using the advanced animation tools up here to modify your drawing. So make sure you haven't done that. Once we've set all our pegs, what we're going to do is make this a little bit smaller, make this a little bit smaller. We're going to go up to our main camera view, we're going to hold down the plus, and we're going to go to node view. And in node view, just like we did last week, we need to start cleaning up this mess. And start thinking about the order that things work in and how they relate to each other. So I'm just going to start pulling these apart randomly, and then I'm going to put them, I'm going to keep a tree order of things going on where I can.
We're making the master scope again.
We will be, yeah. We need to separate things out first because we want to be able to have a very clear understanding of the relationships that exist between all of these objects.
There's a shortkey for that.
Sorry?
There's a shortkey for that.
There is a shortkey to spread everything out, yes.
It's on node view. It should be up the top if you highlight everything.
Yeah, this one here, isn't it?
No,
No.
one next to it. Yeah, no, other side. Next to it. That one. We have to
Yeah,
highlight
that's it.
everything.
Order down. But what order down does though is it just puts it in the order of the composite. Yeah? It doesn't give us the option to start moving things. So what we need to do, let's move that back because that's going to really annoy me. Come back here. What we now want to do is start looking at the actual order. Remember how composite reads from left to right? So I need to think about that. What's the frontmost object? Well, in my mind, the frontmost object is that pupil. That's always going to be at the front. That will be followed by the actual eye itself. So the white of the eye. That will be followed by the body. And I would quite like my shorter tentacles to be in front of my longer tentacles. So I'm going to start kind of pulling those together as well. So yeah, my short one's fine, short two, and then I'll go long one, long two. I don't want to get it the wrong way around. What I tend to do as well is kind of start blocking things together and start locking pegs together as well. So we did the thing last week, we can do it again with the master peg. So just up here, you can add another peg in. Do that. Duplicate display almost. So insert, move. And there you go, so it's loose peg, and yeah, we're going to the settings of that. I'm not gonna do the 3D stuff just yet. I'm just gonna let it sit, and then we'll look at that hierarchy. So we know for definite that the relationship between the master and the body, that's definitive, that's without question. But we also know that the eyes and the legs don't relate to one another. Okay, so the pupil is locked to the main eye. So if we move the main eye, we want the pupil to follow it. And the eye is locked to the body, so that's one connection. And then each of these individually will follow the body. Like so. Just hit save. So when we go back to this view, we've got no distinct change as such. Yeah, there's nothing particularly changing apart from this down here. I feel like we're losing some. Why have I've lost some buttons over here somewhere. So just take a moment to set that up. I'm just going to play around with my tool properties because there's something that I want to activate and I can't see it. Color, snap on a line. So I'll just give you a couple of moments of that.
Did you make a master of it? It's right click, it's double click it immediately.
Yeah, that was it. Okay.
Can you connect the body to it? Yeah, I connect all to the eye and the body.
Right, just another moment.
That makes change cancel as well. Which is all of them. You mean the other way? So that's the other way.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Can you see it? Yeah. Two. I was thinking of another transport line here. Yeah, it's actually it's like New York City where it's still like a regular map. It's really confusing. Have you got interesting map? I haven't heard about New York transport. I think it's worth.
Okay, are we ready to start moving on? Everyone got those done, yeah?
Can we see the note?
Sorry, yeah, apologies. So mine currently looks something like this. So we have a master at the top, which is just good practice, I think. It's like having a gimbal where you can just, or a base plate you can just grab everything with. You've got master, the body, and then the body has a separate set of relationships. So it has the eye down here, and then the legs this way. And remember, our composite is our display setting, so our actual camera view, which we'll get into actually because we're going to start setting up cameras in this. And then we've got our right view as well. So the right is where we then define what the output is, yeah? But we're not going to do that just yet. So let's go, before we get too far into it, the next thing I'd like to show you how to control is a camera itself. Okay, so the camera, this is that black rectangle, that is a camera. Yeah, that's the static view. But it's kind of quite a rigid format to work with. When you think about animation itself, like we have a tendency, I think it's almost built into us, especially when we're learning to animate, where we see the camera as a static object and things just have to kind of move in front of it. It's like theatre, like things just have to kind of walk onto stage and be like, here I am, watch me do a little dance, and then I'll dance off the stage and the next thing comes on. And that's fine when you're learning, but as you get into actually making films, you need to start thinking cinematically and how do you make a camera work for you. So we're going to start setting up some cameras in this for that exact reason, just to give us a bit more kind of creative control over what we do. So the way we do that, first thing I like to do, just minimize in the timeline. So we're going back to camera view, Minimizing your timeline, your master peg, so it just shrinks everything down. Okay, so it's just like that's all kind of shrunk there. And then hit the plus symbol, and then plus camera. And then this is our, when we double click it, this gives us our basic camera settings. So it gives us our clipping, the angle that it's rotated to, so we can actually rotate the camera up if we want to. But it's still kind of flat. It's still like this non-entity. And actually what we want to do is make it a little bit more cinematic. So what we do is we take the camera, we add a peg to the camera, we double click the settings, and we enable it as a 3D camera. So my view is
How did you double click the setting?
So to get to the settings, I'm actually double clicking the icon of the object. So I'm double clicking the icon of the peg. And what this will then allow me to do, I'm going to now go, once I've done that, so I've got a camera that I made, a camera peg, and then I double click the peg and I enabled 3D. And then up in my camera view, I'm going to hit plus, go to perspective. This is my perspective view. And then I'm going to, in my perspective view, I'm going to go to the menu in the top left, view, camera cone. And what that does is that actually tells me where my camera physically is within the space. By adding a peg, what I've also done is I've added a control system to that camera. So now I'm saying, look, not only does a camera exist, but I want to add a peg to it because I then want to be able to move that camera. Okay, I want to be able to pick it up and move it around. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to do some just super basic camera movement. Okay, just some real straightforward stuff. So the first thing we want to do really is maybe do an exposure. So we need to expose the drawing, because you know it's a drawings, isn't it? It only exists for one frame. We need to expose that out so that it exists for a little bit longer. Now, last time I did this, the settings had been changed on Harmony for me, and it didn't do it fast, which was kind of frustrating. Yeah, it used to be the case that you could just you could select the peg and it would just expose everything. I don't think it's going to do that this time. So I'm actually going to I'm going to shift click. So shift click. So I've selected all of my drawings, and then I'm going to go to that frame. Let's go for a full second. So I'm going to go to frame 24. And then hit F5 just to expose my drawings out for that period of time. And can you see how it's not the pegs that have changed there. The pegs don't look any different. It's just the actual drawn content is now exposed out for 24 frames. So for 1 second, those drawings exist. I'm going to go back over here. So I love that parallaxing when you shrink the view. It's the little things like that kind of get me excited about Harmony. You see how it warps the camera, the field?
How do you make timeline bigger?
The timeline bigger? What, in terms of...
As in, like, the seconds look...
Oh, the same way as you would zoom. So just 1 or 2, like the numbers, keys 1 and 2, will like zoom in and zoom out. So what I'm now going to do, so that was so I exposed everything out. Yeah, I did a bit of movement. So I can close this down. I'm going to set something that's really helpful now. This is, again, good practice. I'm going to go to my camera peg. Let's go back to frame 1. We'll go to my camera peg. Up in the top right-hand corner where my tool properties is, I'm going to hit plus and select camera, because that's my view. Yeah, that's what your camera can see. So perspective view is like, this is where your camera is on set or within the location, within the scene. This is what your camera can actually see. Now what I'm going to do is turn my animate mode back on. So animate mode is just here. I'm going to take a moment just to center my my controller.
How are you getting that view?
This is perspective view, and then I'm using the same command and option and click and drag to kind of move it around.
I'm not getting that. Oh, well.
Yeah, and then just use the key, like the mouse, like zoom out, just so you can see the ground a bit better. So you can see now in real time, if I click and drag with my control tool, can you see how in real time on the camera view it actually changes that viewpoint? I'm just going to try and get this a little bit more centered. It's a little bit iffy doing it this way, but it's my kind of preferred method. You see how with a little bit of fiddling I've kind of managed to center the control point for my camera. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a very basic piece of information. What I'm going to set is just a very simple movement. So I'm on frame 1. I'm just going to move my camera like here. Then I'm going to go to frame, what was it, 24 we said, didn't we? Is where we set it. So at frame 24. And maybe adjust the rotation on it as well. So now I'm in transform mode, by the way. So I've hit this transform tool. It gives me much more control over the object. So you'll see that now when I scrub back and forth, I've just done a basic the camera's kind of trucking, so it's moving left to right. And it's also got a slight rotation on it. Should probably let's just turn that mode off. You don't want to see that. Yeah, so I've actually got a little bit of dynamic movement there. I might even go to frame 24 and actually just bring this in a little bit. There we go. So it actually now moves in a bit more diagonally, kind of stays with that shape with a little bit more detail.
I'm not getting that option for my camera.
Is your camera enabled for 3D? And have you activated animate and transform mode? Okay, I'll move down. So select your peg. The peg is how we animate. Okay, and there are your controls for that. So you can, so you're actually rotating it round. You can use the arrow to drag it up, down, left, and right. So you need to go back, you need to go all the way back to frame 1, because that's where you're starting. So on your peg in frame 1, set your start camera, then go to frame 24 and move the peg, and it will, because you've got animate mode on, it will automatically keep frame. Right, you have to select your peg. That's the camera, so you get your peg above it. Okay, have you enabled 3D? Looks like you have. If you double click the actual peg symbol, blue slicer. So you can use it enable 3D, and then just click the X, just get rid of 3D enabled. Oh, just hit transform mode. I've just seen you. There you go. So now with this view, you can kind of move the camera to where you want it to be. So that's the move the controller. Yeah, the arrows and the circle will actually allow you to rotate.
There we go.
So this is warping, these arrows here. And you need to use Command and Option on your keyboard in order to rotate your perspective view. So you can kind of see where you want to move it to. Command and Option, 2 buttons next to one another. Click and hold both of them, and then click and drag. That's the kind of the movement that you want to be able to understand where your camera is within that 3D space. There is a way, and it's completely just popped out of my brain, very embarrassingly, and I'm going to just quickly Google this. I want to just show you how you can see the path.
There's meant to be the orange one.
Yeah.
That one. The lines. Right.
This one.
No, down. Right. No.
Yes, that one. Yeah, there it is. Well done. Yeah, okay. And that's where you hit P to add a movement, by the way. You were saying, where do you add P?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's in the camera path. Right, so, see, you did the videos, didn't you? what I've done there's a little button in my camera mode which is show path, which is this one. It's this little button just here, and what it does, it basically shows you when you've got your peg selected, where your start points are, or basically your keyframes are. That's the best way to think about it. So you've got a keyframe here, which is the beginning. You've got a keyframe here, which is the beginning, and that's the actual path that your camera moves on. You can also activate that same path for any time you move a peg on another object, like a tentacle. Yes, you can see the full movement path. It's not, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for when you're animating objects all the time, because there's just paths everywhere, and it can get kind of quite complex in understanding them. But it does show you some very, very interesting information, which, if you're a bit of a nerd about things like movement, is kind of cool. So the first thing it shows you is those little vertical lines, these little guys, represent the frames. So you can actually see the relationship that exists when you start thinking of things like, you know, we did the slow in, slow out, yeah, and like smoothing. That will adjust the behavior of these frames. So I'm going to select this peg. The other thing we do is when we hover over it, if we hover over the actual line itself, I'm trying to remember how to do it now. That's it. So if you click, so there's our peg. If you actually select the start or end point, and you see it goes purple, so you're saying that I just want to select the actual frame, the keyframe itself. If you then hover over the line and hit the P button, wherever you're hovering, it will add another one of those key points. And then you can grab those and actually flex them in order to create patterns of movement. Now this can get a little bit weird, especially when you're in 3D view, because you're looking at something three-dimensionally, and that's a little bit strange. But one of the ways to kind of get your head around it is to either set your camera from specific angles. So I'm looking at my camera straight on, like front view, and then if I grab that and pull it down, when I rotate, you see how it's kind of pulled it down. There you go, undo that. If I'm looking at this side on, and then I pull it forwards, it's going to bow it forwards. Yeah, so that's one way you can do it. The other way you can control the camera tracking or camera movement, if you hit plus and go to like, let's do top view because that makes sense. You go to top view. Top view just basically gives you a breakdown of all your information in your scene from the top down. So like putting a camera looking straight down on the 3D environment. So that means that if I go right now, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this right in like this. And then over here, I'm going to hit P, and pull this one back. There we go. So that's my top-down view. If I go back to my perspective view, that's what that actually looks like. And now when I scrub through, I actually get that complete movement in the camera, so I can see it play back.
What am I holding down to the bottom of that line?
P, like the letter P. So you have to have part of the line selected, I do believe. So you just kind of click it, hover over where you want it. I think you can delete them as well. Yeah, you can just hit backspace to delete any of the control points. But it's kind of a nice thing. It gives you this kind of cinematic control over your scene. So you're not just thinking about like shapes moving now. Now you're thinking like a filmmaker, like I've got this wicked squid doing the mad stuff with the tentacles. How can I show that in the most cinematic way? Maybe I don't just want it going blah, 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 like across the screen. I want to maybe pull the camera out and twist it slightly as that object kind of moves or as it animates. So give yourself a moment to see if you can just set up like a slightly interesting track, like an S-curve track or a bow curve like track for the camera, just so you can get your head around it. And then we're going to pause and let everyone breathe, because we should be, yeah, oh, blimey, we're like 15 minutes behind really. We're going to pause, let everyone go for a break, and then when we come back, we're going to actually do deformation rigs on your whole character. We're going to do deformer rigs on all of it so that you can do some really fast, really kind of cool animation, and then hopefully a little light bulb will go off in your head and you'll be like, oh, actually, this software is amazing. Like he can do everything. Yes, Tom.
So we're already considering switching to this for our MTP. Are you going to be here around the Easter break?
No.
Yeah.
No, I am here. No, actually, no, I'm not. So I fly out. I'm working overseas for 2 weeks next week.
Yeah.
Then I come back. I think it's like the 1st. So I'm here for like 3 or 4 days from the 1st of April.
Yeah.
And then I'm away again until like we start back, which I think is the 15th of April.
Yeah.
That being said, so what I'm going to do after Easter, I'm going to do 2 kinds of Toon Boom Harmony workshops. I'm going to do ones with the second years, which are a bit more structured because we have to. You will have see from the video when you get to it. When I've finished sharing it, it's slower. Everything's kind of spaced out a little bit more. So I'm doing those classes still, but then I'm going to do classes where I basically just sit in the room. You do your thing. I'm about, and then we can kind of. It's like troubleshooting. Do you know what I mean? Just supporting for anyone that is working on it.
Cool.
Okay, because it's.
They have this on like Linda.
They have it on their website.
Yeah. Learn.toonboom.com has got that. I mean, that's not very much. It's not very project based. There are projects on there, but it's very much tool and function based. So if you want to know how to do a specific thing, there's a video series that shows you kind of how to do it. If you want to just practice, which I'll be honest, you lot don't really have time necessarily to do that. If you're going to do it for your project, you've got to just go for it. They do have downloadable things like complete downloadable rigs. You can just throw into your project and play with. So they're a great way to learn. But yeah, over Easter, not so much. But beyond that, I'll probably be living here. Right, bear with me 2 seconds. I'm gonna, like I said, have a play with this for another 2 minutes. I'm gonna stop the recording for the moment, and then we'll pick it up again after we've had.